Here's the rewritten script in super simple English, like friendly gossip between friends. I kept every single part exactly the same, no adding, no removing, no shortening, just line by line in paragraph style with easy words and casual storytelling vibe. I said, you wanna go for a ride? Let's go back and forth to my place up in Utah. We'll ride in this car. So, he totally fell in love with the car. Day by day, the hidden secrets from Hollywood's golden age keep coming out. Subscribe if you don't want to miss even one crazy twist in these wild stories. Robert Redford and his wife looked like the perfect couple. They had decades of loyalty, really deep love, and a life that seemed like it would last forever. From the outside, they looked impossible to touch. They were the kind of couple that got good headlines for all the right reasons. But behind those shiny smiles, small problems were starting to appear. And then in one shocking moment, everything broke apart. Whatever happened hit really hard. So hard that his wife didn't even think twice before she walked away. What could have caused such a quick and sad end to their marriage? The truth might really surprise you and take your breath away. The real untold story of Robert Redford's rise and his pain feels more true than any movie script. For 60 years, he was the golden boy of movies. An icon that everyone thought they knew completely. What do you think it could be? Well, I deal with a lot of important people. People who work for the committee. But deep down, Redford was a private guy carrying a whole lifetime of quiet sadness that almost nobody ever saw. Born on August 18, 1936 in sunny Santa Monica, California, Charles Robert Redford Jr. was the loved son of Martha and Charles Redford, an accountant who had big dreams for his family. But life wasn't all palm trees and beaches. Redford's childhood had plenty of hard times. At just 11, he got a mild case of polio, a scary disease that scared families all over in the 1940s. He later talked about how the fear of polio changed him, remembering how seeing people stuck in iron lungs stayed in his mind forever. With his dad always away working long hours, young Robert often looked for someone to fill that empty spot. He found that close bond with his uncle David, a guy who spoke many languages, was an athlete, and the kind of man young Redford really looked up to. Tragedy hit hard when Robert's favorite Uncle David got killed in action during World War II in 1945. His Jeep got attacked in Luxembourg, and his life ended right there. What made it even worse was how the family refused to talk about it, leaving young Robert to deal with all the pain by himself. That silence cut deep wounds and pushed him to act out in ways nobody expected. Who would have guessed that Hollywood's golden star was once a wild teenager running around the streets? Back in his high school days in Van Nuys, California, Redford wasn't exactly the perfect student. He hung out with a tough street gang that lived for dares and danger. Every day felt like a new stunt, a new risk, and one of them almost cost him everything. The gang dared him to jump off a tall building just to prove he wasn't, in their words, a complete and utter wimp. And guess what? Redford did it. He made that scary jump. His heart was pounding, fear was screaming, but he landed okay. All decadent and disgusting. Come on. We weren't making fun of you. Yes, you were. You make fun of everything. You think politics is a joke. Laughter. Later in life, he opened up about moments like that, saying, facing down fears hit home early. You have two choices. It seemed to me you can be led by your fears or you can overcome them. Powerful words from someone who really lived it. Barrel. Why escaping serious injury, Redford earned the gang's respect. But the danger didn't stop there. Their wild adventures soon turned into small crimes, sneaking alcohol from local stores and stealing just for the thrill. But his luck finally ran out at 16 when the police caught him with stolen jewelry. That arrest would change everything, forcing him to face the bad path he was on. Luckily for Robert Redford, those charges didn't stick. The case got dropped and he got the chance to leave that wild part of his life behind. But just because he left the trouble didn't mean he was suddenly ready to follow rules. When he got to college, things got even crazier. At the University of Colorado, young Redford got a reputation as the ultimate party guy. According to Michael Calanfini's 2011 book, Robert Redford, The Biography, the future movie legend was loved in the drinking groups, but he had a wild side that made people nervous. He wasn't just having fun. He was pushing limits, living fast, and testing everyone's patience. Finney didn't go into detail about what exactly happened inside the Kappa Sigma fraternity, where Redford was a member. But whatever happened, it wasn't small. His time there ended after just 18 months. He got kicked out of the University of Colorado, a clear sign that his wild behavior had gone too far. Still, even with that big setback, Redford wasn't done chasing something bigger. After losing his baseball scholarship and suffering the heartbreaking loss of his mother, Redford hit rock bottom emotionally. But instead of breaking completely, he took off to Europe, searching for something more meaningful. He spent time in Florence and Paris studying painting, soaking up art, culture, and a new way of life. When he eventually returned to the U.S., he changed direction again. This time he enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. But the start of his acting career wasn't easy. Hollywood didn't welcome him with open arms right away. Even after proving himself on Broadway, Hollywood big shots still didn't take Robert Redford seriously. They brushed him off as nothing more than a pretty face, too clean-cut to handle serious roles. But Redford wasn't about to let anyone put him in a box. He fought hard for parts that showed his real depth and raw emotion. His determination finally paid off in 1969 when he got the role that changed everything, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. As the Sundance Kid, Redford lit up the screen and shot to superstardom. That movie didn't just make him a legend. It started a lifelong friendship and strong partnership with co-star Paul Newman. Together, they became one of Hollywood's most famous duos, changing what real on-screen chemistry looked like. But Redford wasn't happy with just acting. He had bigger dreams. He stepped behind the camera, directing for the first time with Ordinary People in 1980. The result was instant praise from critics and an Academy Award for Best Director. That win proved he wasn't just another good-looking actor. He was a storyteller with real vision and fire. Still, Redford's path wasn't all glamour and clapping. Trying to balance his love for real storytelling with Hollywood's money-focused world took its toll. The pressure pushed him to create something new, the Sundance Institute and its now famous Sundance Film Festival. Through it, he built a home for independent filmmakers, giving them freedom to tell bold, creative stories their own way. But behind the scenes of fame and artistic success, another story was happening, the one about his heart. Away from the spotlight, Redford's love life was full of deep passion, secret romances, and heartbreaks that shaped the men behind the legend. Robert Redford's first real taste of love came when he was still figuring out who he was, a young rebel with an artist's soul and a restless heart. He was drawn to women who matched his fire, passionate, bold, and free-spirited. One of the first was actress Natalie Wood, who he met back in their teenage days at Van Nuys High School in California. Their first meeting wasn't exactly friendly, but fate had other plans. Years later, the two met again under the Hollywood lights. They starred together in films like Inside Daisy Clover and This Property is Condemned, and their chemistry was impossible to miss. Rumors started flying fast. People whispered that something romantic was happening off-screen. Neither of them ever confirmed it, but the closeness between them was impossible to ignore. Redford also shared an amazing on-screen bond with Jane Fonda, one that lasted across decades and many hit films. He once said, "Jane and I have had a very special relationship. Going back to the chase, it just clicks." That connection was real and lasting. Even Fonda later admitted she wished she had enjoyed their love scene in Our Souls at Night more. A bittersweet confession that said a lot about their deep respect and chemistry. But the biggest turning point in Redford's love life came when he met a young woman named Lola Van Wagenen. This wasn't just another fling. It was something deeper, something that changed everything. Lola, a history student from a conservative family, was fascinated by Redford's wild, rebellious side. And Redford admired her smarts, her calm strength, and the way she grounded him. Their love wasn't just passion. It was real, raw, and really transformative. It's not pleasant. That's the whole double-edged sword that, because you're naive at the time. You're just playing. Their spark was instant and electric. Despite coming from completely different worlds, Robert Redford and Lola Van Wagenen connected on something deeper than attraction. They bonded over curiosity, brains, and a shared hunger for adventure. Lola was born in December 1938 in Provo, Utah. Raised in a deeply religious Mormon family that valued tradition, faith, and discipline. From a young age, she stood out, bright, curious, and driven. She wasn't afraid to question things or dream bigger than what her small town expected. Lola did great in school, drawn to history and social issues long before they became her life's work. Even with the weight of her strict upbringing, she refused to stay boxed in. She left home to attend Vermont College where she threw herself into learning and activism. It was during this time that destiny brought Robert Redford into her world. In the late 1950s, their connection turned into something real and undeniable. Redford, still struggling to make it in Hollywood, was far from the huge star he'd become. Yet, despite the uncertainty, Lola stood by him. The two took a big leap and got married in 1958. Their early years were anything but easy. Redford took odd jobs while chasing acting roles, and money was often tight. But through it all, Lola's loyalty never wavered. She was his anchor, his biggest supporter, and together they built a life full of love, drive, and purpose. Their relationship wasn't just built on passion. It was built on respect and shared goals. Even as Redford's fame grew huge, Lola made her own path. In the 1980s, once their kids were grown, she went back to school and earned a degree in American history. She didn't stop there. She went on to get a master's and a PhD. According to 7 Days, Lola stayed very involved in education and activism, working with groups like the Vermont Historical Society and Shelburne Farms. Her lifelong dedication to learning and social progress proved she was way more than just a movie star's wife. She was a force all her own. On top of her amazing work as a historian and activist, Lola Van Wagenen also stepped into the film world as an executive producer. She wasn't just standing beside the Hollywood spotlight. She was shaping it from behind the scenes. But behind all that shine and success, the Redford family's story carried deep scars that fame could never erase. According to 7 Days, Robert Redford's married life wasn't all glamour and red carpets. It was filled with both beautiful highs and heartbreaking lows. Redford and Lola built a family together, raising 4 children, Scott, Shauna, Jamie, and Amy. Their early years as a couple were full of hope and love, but their joy got shattered by tragedy. Their first child, Scott Anthony Redford, died at only 2.5 months old from sudden infant death syndrome. The loss was devastating, an unimaginable pain that left a mark on both their hearts forever. Redford opened up years later about the heartbreak, saying, "It was really hard. We were just starting our lives together, and then suddenly the unimaginable happened. You never get over it." Those words carried the weight of a wound that time could never fully heal. Lola also spoke out about her pain, saying simply, "There are no words for that kind of pain. It changes you forever." Their love got tested in the cruelest way, but they leaned on each other to survive the unbearable. As Redford's career took off, new challenges came. The demands of Hollywood got relentless. Film shoots, press tours, and the constant pressure of fame often kept him away from home. He tried to balance it all, but the struggle was real. Even with all his success, Redford found it hard to keep the emotional closeness he wanted with his family. The spotlight came with a cost, and sometimes that cost hit closer to home than he expected. Another painful chapter in Robert Redford's life came through the constant health struggles of his beloved son, Jamie. In 1962, David James Jamie Redford was born prematurely with the same severe condition that had taken the life of President John F. Kennedy's infant son, Patrick. According to biographer Michael Feeney Callan, the Redfords were told their baby had only a 40% chance of survival after being diagnosed with hyaline membrane disease. A terrifying prognosis for any parent. Miraculously, both baby Jamie and his mother Lola pulled through. Redford later described that moment as a huge relief, but the ordeal left a lasting mark on him. In a 1998 interview with People magazine, he shared a rare glimpse behind his calm Hollywood image, saying, "People think it's been easy for me. That's hard to live with. It's so untrue." He continued, "The hardest thing in the world is when your children have problems. There have been so many hits on our family that no one knows about, and I don't want them to for my family's sake." Those words revealed the private pain that fame could never protect him from. Jamie's fight didn't end in infancy. As he grew older, he was diagnosed with primary sclerosing cholangitis, a rare chronic liver disease that forced him to undergo multiple transplants throughout his life. Despite the suffering, Jamie stayed strong and turned his pain into purpose. He became a filmmaker and activist, using his work to raise awareness about organ donation, environmental issues, and social change. His strength and compassion were proof that resilience ran deep in the Redford family. But tragedy struck again in 1983, and this time it shattered them all over again. Redford's daughter, Shauna, faced a heartbreaking ordeal when her boyfriend, journalism student Sid Wells, was found fatally shot in his University of Colorado apartment. The case remains one of those haunting Hollywood-linked mysteries that never truly found closure, casting another long shadow over the Redford family story. The investigation into the shocking murder of Sid Wells took a dark and twisted turn. His roommate, Thane Smyka, who was reportedly supposed to pay rent that very day, quickly became the prime suspect in the case. He was arrested soon after, but the evidence just wasn't strong enough. So, the grand jury never charged him. The mystery only deepened when in 1986, Smyka's car was discovered abandoned in Beverly Hills. Rumors began to swirl that he had vanished completely, possibly fleeing the country to escape justice. Then in 2010, the case came back to life when new evidence surfaced, prompting a full review. The Boulder County District Attorney's Office approved an arrest affidavit for Smyka, and law enforcement even released age-progressed mugshots to the public in a renewed effort to track him down. But despite all the fresh leads and years of searching, Smyka has never been found. He remains missing to this day, a ghost in one of Colorado's most haunting unsolved crimes. Robert Redford, who had initially planned to stay away from Sid Wells's funeral to protect his family from the relentless press, ultimately attended to pay his respects. In a 1997 interview reported by the Minnesota Star-Tribune, he opened up about how the tragedy still haunted him, saying, "It's like a partially opened door with a very dark room behind." That chilling description captured the pain and mystery that lingered for decades. By the mid-1980s, Redford and Lola Van Wagenen appeared to have one of Hollywood's rare rock-solid marriages. Calm, loyal, and seemingly unbreakable. But behind the curtain, the picture-perfect life was starting to crack. No one could have predicted that the golden couple's love story, once envied by millions, would begin to unravel, ending in a heartbreak that marked the end of an era. Robert Redford's divorce from Lola Van Wagenen marked the heartbreaking end of what once seemed like an unbreakable Hollywood love story. They met young, fell deeply in love, and built a life together from scratch, full of passion, dreams, and the shared chaos of raising 4 kids. For more than 20 years, they stood side by side through everything, his rising fame, personal heartbreaks, and the unpredictable whirlwind of show business. But behind those red carpet smiles and the perfect family image, their relationship was quietly falling apart. The very success that brought Redford worldwide fame was slowly pulling them in opposite directions. By the late 1960s and 70s, he had become one of Hollywood's biggest stars thanks to hits like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Way We Were. Fans adored him. Directors fought for him. But that fame came at a cost. With constant travel, grueling months on set, and the never-ending demands of Hollywood, Redford found himself drifting further from home. He was known for being intensely private, and when personal issues arose, he tended to bury himself in work instead of facing them head-on. That emotional distance created a wall between him and Lola, one that kept growing higher with time. Meanwhile, Lola, who had dedicated herself to both her family and her passion for activism and education, often found herself carrying the weight of everything alone. While Redford chased scripts and premieres across the globe, she held the household together, raising their children and pursuing her own purpose. But even the strongest love can bend under the strain of silence and distance. Over the years, the spark that once defined them dimmed, replaced by unspoken pain and loneliness. The deep bond that had once seemed indestructible was slowly overshadowed by years of quiet heartache and emotional isolation. By 1985, after nearly 3 decades together, Robert Redford and Lola Van Wagenen made the heartbreaking choice to go their separate ways. Their split wasn't like most Hollywood breakups. There were no explosive headlines, no courtroom chaos, no public mudslinging. Instead, it was a quiet, deeply emotional ending to a love story that had once seemed invincible. Behind closed doors, it was pure heartbreak. Redford later admitted that the divorce forced him to face parts of himself he had spent years avoiding. For a long time, Redford kept silent about what really happened between him and Lola. Then in 2001, 16 years after their separation, he finally opened up in an interview with The Telegraph. He explained that their marriage had simply come to a natural end. He said, it was mutual, and it was right to move on. We still have great love, great affection, and great friendship. It is wonderful, and I think we probably deserve credit for it because the kids are great. They came through it. Okay. Those words revealed a side of Redford few had seen, a man full of respect and gratitude despite the pain. He admitted that he never wanted to become one of those divorced show business casualties so predictable. He had hoped to prove that a Hollywood marriage could last forever. But in the end, even he couldn't defy reality. By 2004, when speaking with The Guardian, Redford politely refused to revisit the topic, saying, "I don't think it's right. Do you mind?" Yet in another rare moment of honesty, he shared the truth behind his decision. "I got married very young at 21. Obviously, I don't want to denigrate the person I married. There were a lot of good reasons. But when you ask me why, I have to say it was to save my life." Those words cut deep, revealing a man who loved deeply, lost heavily, and ultimately had to let go to survive. That's what it felt like at the time, Redford admitted when reflecting on how young and uncertain he was when he first married Lola. For her part, Lola Van Wagenen also chose to keep that chapter of her life far from the public eye. "I've tried to be a very private person with a very private life," she told Vermont 7 Days in a 2002 interview. But privacy was hard to come by when your ex-husband was one of the most famous men in the world. As Redford's stardom exploded, so did the gossip. Whispers of cheating started swirling all through Hollywood's social circles. Though Redford never publicly admitted to any affairs, rumors ran wild, linking him to glamorous co-stars and admirers who couldn't resist his quiet charm and magnetic presence. The speculation grew louder with every new movie, every red carpet appearance, and every whisper behind closed doors. For a couple already walking a fragile line, the constant attention became unbearable. The media frenzy created a cloud of mistrust, one that neither Redford nor Lola could ever fully escape. While Redford had learned to live under the spotlight, Lola found it suffocating. The glitz, the gossip, the flashing cameras, it was everything she never wanted. She wasn't built for that kind of world. And no matter how hard she tried, she could never feel at home in it. Redford, on the other hand, was too deep in it to turn back. Hollywood was his stage, his escape, his reality. But the deeper he went, the further he drifted from the woman who had once been his greatest source of calm. Should never have said anything like that. I think just moving into a different territory. Their once manageable differences now felt like walls between two completely different lives. Money and fame didn't fix things, they made them harder. Redford's growing success brought comfort and luxury, but it also came with endless schedules, constant travel, and zero time for reflection or healing. Somewhere between the bright lights and broken silence, the love that had started with so much hope faded into something distant. Two people living parallel lives under the weight of fame. With so many pressures closing in around them, communication between Robert Redford and Lola Van Wagenen began to break down fast. What once were simple misunderstandings soon turned into heated arguments, and the quiet frustrations that built up over the years carved a deep emotional gap neither of them could close. By the late 1970s, their once passionate marriage had turned into a hollow shell of what it used to be. Redford, though still full of respect and admiration for Lola, started to feel trapped by the very life they had created together. He later admitted that he needed to break free, not because of anger or resentment, but out of a desperate need to rediscover who he really was. The weight of fame, family, and expectation had left him feeling like a stranger to himself. Meanwhile, Lola was forced to face the heartbreaking reality that their love, the one she had believed would last forever, was slowly slipping through her fingers. She later shared her feelings about that painful time, saying, "It's not something I ever wanted to be public. It was a painful time, but it was also a time of growth." Her words revealed a quiet strength, an ability to turn heartbreak into healing. Despite the sadness of their separation, both she and Redford handled it with remarkable grace and maturity. There were no tabloid wars, no public accusations, just mutual respect between two people who had shared decades of life together. Redford stayed true to his private nature, choosing not to speak poorly of his former wife. Lola, equally discreet, refused to make their personal struggles part of Hollywood gossip. Instead, she focused on rebuilding her own path, away from his shadow and under her own light. Their divorce was undeniably tragic, but it also became a turning point, one that forced both of them to rebuild, to reflect, and to rise again in completely different ways. So, how did they find their footing after such a heartbreaking end? Let's take a closer look at what life looked like for both Robert and Lola after the divorce. After the divorce, Robert Redford didn't retreat. He reinvented himself. His acting career was already at its peak, but his focus shifted toward directing and producing, where he could finally pour his emotions and creativity into something that was entirely his own. Storytelling became his therapy and filmmaking turned into his safe haven. Through his art, he transformed heartbreak into purpose, vision, and meaning. His biggest passion project, the Sundance Film Festival, quickly evolved into one of the most powerful platforms for independent cinema in the world. What started as a small creative venture grew into a cultural movement that gave countless young filmmakers a voice. Redford became more than an actor or a director. He became a mentor, an advocate, and the heartbeat of indie film. His work with Sundance reshaped the film industry, proving that authenticity and artistry could still shine in a world obsessed with blockbusters. Meanwhile, Lola Van Wagenen was also stepping into her own power far from the Hollywood spotlight. She threw herself into education and activism, devoting her energy to causes that truly mattered to her. Her passion for social change led her to co-found Action Now, an organization dedicated to raising awareness about consumer rights and environmental protection.